It is 4 in the afternoon. The teacher walks your daughter out to the carpool line, smiles, and tells you she had a wonderful day. She shared the markers, she sat on the carpet for the entire story, she even helped a friend who fell on the playground. 20 minutes later, you open your front door. Your daughter throws her backpack onto the floor, a shoe goes flying across the hallway, and she collapses into a puddle of tears on the kitchen tile. You stand there holding a perfectly sliced snack, and a very specific thought loops in your head. What is wrong with me? They were perfect at school. They were polite at grandma's house. It feels like a personal indictment, proof that your kid behaves for everyone except you. That fear gets passed around in whispered group chats and late-night Reddit threads, but it is based on a complete misreading of the situation. You are carrying a heavy, exhausting guilt for a scenario that you are actually getting right. Here is the reality. The places where a child holds it together perfectly are often the places where they feel the least safe to be their full selves. All day long, they have to read the room. They have to share a toy when they don't want to, ask permission to use the bathroom, and use a quiet voice when their body wants to roar. Clinicians call this wearing an emotional costume, and the labor of wearing it is exhausting. The babysitter gets the polite version because the child does not yet trust that the babysitter can hold the messy version. You get the meltdown because your child has already proven you can handle it. It is an act of absolute trust. Think about the sensory inputs that hit your child the second they walk through the door. They smell your laundry detergent. They feel the rug. They see your face. Their nervous system reads all of that in a fraction of a second and sends one clear message. You are home. You can let go. Clinicians sometimes call what happens next after school restraint collapse. The phrase makes it sound like a diagnosis, but it is really just physics. A child spends 6 hours holding the lid on a pot of warm water. The lid comes off, and the steam is loud. Clinical notes describe exactly what happens next: crying, clinging to a parent like a barnacle, suddenly defying instructions after being compliant all day. None of those behaviors is a defect. Each one is simply the body finally being allowed to speak. What looks like a psychological breakdown on your kitchen tile is actually a successful, healthy biological response to a completely safe environment. In the 1950s, a British psychiatrist named John Bowlby observed children separated from their parents in institutions like this one. He realized that while food and shelter were necessary, they were incomplete. A child's nervous system was hunting for a specific, consistent adult to answer the question, am I safe? A decade later, Mary Ainsworth took this observation into a beige room. She watched how a child would play, fall, wobble, and then return to their mother to be held before going back out. She called that anchoring adult a secure base. But why does the child pick you to be that base, and not a perfectly loving, highly committed partner? The answer is logistical. Whoever does the most of the unseen labor of regulation tends to become the primary attachment figure. It is the person who unlatches the tricky seatbelt or knows the difference between the hungry cry and the tired cry without looking up. When they fall apart in front of you, a biological transfer is happening. Because they cannot regulate their own emotions yet, they are borrowing your mature nervous system to learn how to run their own. If your partner gets the giggles and you get the meltdowns, they aren't a better parent. The giggles are beautiful, but the meltdown parent is the foundational architecture keeping the entire family system level. If you have more than one child, you will often see this play out in real time. The sibling who is the least regulated will usually be fiercely attached to the parent who regulates the most. It is tempting to look at the other sibling, the quiet, independent one, and assume they are simply better regulated. But sometimes they are just a child who noticed without anyone saying a word that the parents are already busy. The loud, demanding child is reaching for you as a tool for emotional survival, using your presence the way a swimmer uses a kickboard. A young child lacks the prefrontal vocabulary to tell you the cafeteria was overwhelming, so the feeling comes out in the only language they have. A scream is a sentence. A thrown shoe is their way of asking you to notice that their capacity is full. When they blow in the door, you have about 90 seconds to decide what kind of afternoon this is going to be. First, establish an anchor. by lowering your own physical signs of stress. Take a slow breath through your nose, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders. Looking at this decision map, your next steps are clear. First, acknowledge. Name the feeling without trying to fix it. Say, you had a really big day. Then, offer. Give a flooded brain a maximum of 2 simple choices. Do you want a hug or do you want a glass of water? Finally, wait. You let the storm be a storm. You do not narrate their behavior, and you do not try to teach a moral lesson about throwing shoes. The lesson lands later when the brain is actually back online. You hold the boundary without setting a punishment by using one simple truth. Your feelings are welcome, but your fists are not. That structure protects both of you. There are afternoons when you will fail this protocol entirely. You will snap, use a voice you didn't mean to use, and lay in bed at midnight wishing you could erase it. The research on secure attachment does not measure perfect parents. It measures parents who repair. Looking at your child the next morning and apologizing is exactly what teaches them that mistakes are survivable and that relationships can bend without breaking. So the next time a teacher or a babysitter tells you how perfectly well-behaved your kid was, banish that flicker of shame in your stomach. The messy, screaming collapse on the kitchen floor is your parenting trophy. It is won only in the absolute safety of your presence.